Hello, my name's Lad Dunfield, and I'm the pastor of the St. Andrews Baptist Church right here in St. Andrews. Very few of us could think that 2 weeks ago we'd be under a state of emergency, or that we couldn't cross the border for milk and eggs. Our schools would be closed. Tens of thousands of people would be out of work. The stock market would have lost all the money that it had gained in the last 4 years. And that people would be finding themselves more and more anxious about what's going on in the world around them. And it's no wonder. It's a time that most of us don't understand what might come down the pike, what's next in our lives. Things are scary. And there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress out there. A lot of people wondering, okay, now that the kids are home from school, who's going to look after them if I have to go to work each day? What about grandma living down in Halifax or somewhere? Who's going to look after her? How are we going to make ends meet if we've lost our jobs? What about our savings and our investments? And it's all because of the coronavirus, something that a lot of us don't know a lot about, but we're stressed out by it, and 24 hours a day it seems to be bombarded to us by the news and the press. It seems as if this could be one of the worst things that has happened in a long time, if we listen to the press every day and what they're telling us. There's no doubt about it. We need to be cautious, and we need to really watch ourselves and what we do. I think the government on all levels, from the federal government to the provincial government to our municipal government, are doing their best. And I think we need to follow a lot of their regulations and what they're trying to tell us. Do the distancing, self-quarantine if you've been out of the country. Try to wash your hands, use sanitizers. Just really try to be smart and use some common sense in how we do this. And yet, regardless of all of these things that we do, it still comes down that there's still a lot of stress out there. There's still a lot of anxiety. And that's what I would like to address here for just a few minutes. How do we go about dealing with something that is really new to us? I know I've never experienced anything like this. I've never even imagined that Canada could be in a lockdown, that there would be no flights in and out of Canada, that, like I said, our border would be closed. We're in a new day, and I think a lot of us understand that. And when we're finished, things may not be the same as they've always been before, too. I think things are going to change to a great degree. Some of the things that we've done in the past, some of the ways that we've acted, some of the ways that we've gone about doing things, from the size of meetings we have to how we interact with each other, I think are going to take a lot of change and are going to bring around a lot of change. And some of us aren't quite prepared for all that because we're not quite sure how that's going to look. There's a story in the Old Testament. It's one of the great stories of the Old Testament. It's about the children of Israel coming out of captivity in Egypt and going to the Promised Land. They get to the gates of the Promised Land. They get to the land, and instead of going in, they look around and they see that it's a wild, hard place. There's a group of people in the land that are large size, and they call them giants. And they look around and they see as well that there's a lot of warriors and warlike tribes. There's a lot of things going on. And as a result of that, they become frightened. And they turn back and they don't go in. For 40 years, they stay outside. 40 years later, under Joshua, they decide to go back into the Promised Land. As they're getting ready to go in, God talks to Joshua. He comes and he speaks to him. And he says to him, you know, Joshua, this is a hard task you've got in front of you. There's a lot of unknowns for you. There's a lot of things that are facing you as you go into this new era, into this new land, that are frightening and that are scary. However, he says to him, I will never leave you, I will never forsake you. Be not discouraged, be strong, and be courageous. He goes on to say to him, don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. If there was ever a time in our lives when we needed to be strong and courageous, it's now. If there was ever a time that we didn't need to be discouraged or afraid, it's now. Yes, there are a lot of things we don't understand. There are a lot of things that are yet to unfold. We don't know how long that we'll be under the coronavirus and what's going on with it. But we do know that it depends on how we look at things and how we deal with it. Inmates have a thing that they say when they go to prison: you can either do your time or your time does you. I think this is a time that maybe you could do your time. We can't change it. We can't lift the quarantines. We can't lift how we get around. We can't open the schools. That's all decisions that are above us. But we can determine how we treat each other and what we do. Maybe this is a time, if your kids are home from school and they've spent a lot of time in daycare, that you can sit down and spend more time with your kids. Make cookies. I talked to a couple not just long ago that were saying that they were doing crossword puzzles together, and that they had, for the first time in a long time, were getting together as a family, turning off video games. They were turning off watching 24 hours about the coronavirus. They were going for walks. They were talking together. And for the first time in a long time, they were eating meals together. It's a time that we can heal, that we can bring together and do things together as a family. These are important aspects of our life. If we spend our whole time stuck in front of the TV set, allowing ourselves to be discouraged and fearful, we're simply going to let the time do us. But instead, if we decide that we're going to take the best of this, go ahead, do something constructive, have fun with our families, do something for our community. I know right here in St. Andrews that the Kiwanis Club has organized a group of people together. They've trained them, they go out, they deliver groceries and medications to people who aren't able to get out. I talked to a man just an hour ago who said he had his first delivery brought to his place today, and how fortunate he felt that there are people that are doing that kind of thing right here in the community. Well, you might be able to pick the phone up and phone someone you hadn't talked to for a long time. Maybe that grandma in Halifax that you hadn't spoken to in months. Pick the phone up. Talk to people in your community. Reconnect with family. You know, there are a lot of people who have had a lot of stress and arguments in their life over the years. I recently talked to a man who hadn't talked to his brother for 12 years. There had been an argument at the cottage. They had argued over the son. This man's son had done something that his brother hadn't liked, and he spoke to this man about it, and the next thing, one thing leads to another. They had never gone back to the camp ever together as families. They hadn't spoken together. And maybe now's the time to just put some of that stuff behind and say, you know what? These are pretty rough times we live in. These are pretty dangerous times. These are times that we're just not sure of what the future's holding in all of this. And maybe it's time to pick the phone up and phone that person that you've been estranged from, to get back together again with your family. There are people down the street that might be alone and could use a phone call, could use a word of encouragement. And so we can take this crisis, this situation that really has an impact on all of our lives, and there's no skirting that issue. We're all in the same boat. We're all here together. And we can either make this one of the worst times of our life, or we can do something with this. We can stop maybe being as afraid or discouraged or despondent as we have been. And maybe we can count on some inner strength that God gives us. Maybe it's time that we started to let healing take place in our lives and in our families' lives. Maybe it's time to rethink about things that we've put off a long time. To read the children a book before they go to bed. To play a game. To sit around and talk. To renew relationships. We should be able to use this time for healing. This time to be able to become more than what we were before we started with this situation that we now find ourselves in. The coronavirus will come and it will go. There's no doubt about that. Things come, things go. But how we respond to the coronavirus, becoming people that hoard, that take things away from other people for our own selfishness, will stay with us for a long, long time. There was a picture in the Daily Mail the other day of an older man in England standing in a department store with a list. And he was looking at the list, and on both sides of the aisles there was nothing. Everything had been cleaned out. People had been looking after all of their needs and more. This is a time that we should learn to share, a time that we should care, a time that we should show some compassion and love towards other people. This isn't all about us. We're all in this together. We are, in reality, a family. And no matter how we look at it, we here in this county, in this province, have got to count on each other. We've got to support each other. And we have a Heavenly Father that cares about us. And so my advice or my encouragement, I guess, would be a better way to say it, to each of us tonight is, hey, why not give ourselves an opportunity to just try things a bit different than we've done them in the past? And instead of being discouraged beyond words, let's instead look upwards, see what we can do to be a better citizen in this time and a better encouragement to the people around us. Thank you for listening. I'm Lad Dunfield, pastor of the St. Andrews Baptist Church here in St. Andrews.